I think MicroStrategy hits $1 trillion in 2025. I think at $1 trillion, we see like a mean reversion, and it could happen quick. I mean, we could go from 100 billion to $1 trillion, I think pretty quickly. I personally think the volatility is going to increase. I think we're going to see bigger amplitudes up and down moving forward into 2025. It's going to freak people out. The mania that we saw in November is going to look like a drop in the bucket. At a $400,000 Bitcoin price, I mean, who's selling? Like, if you really think this is a new economic monetary ecosystem where you can use it as collateral to facilitate and finance your life in different ways, what's the point of selling? This is one of the really interesting parts in my perspective is if there's a strategic Bitcoin reserve, we're going to see the price of Bitcoin go up, and there could be a game theory phenomenon happening where, you know, you've got nation states competing for adding more Bitcoin to balance sheet. And I suspect we're going to see 20 plus companies add Bitcoin to their balance sheet in 2025. Potentially even more. And maybe they're not fully porting like full, you know, MicroStrategy treasury company, but they're going to add it to their balance sheet as I need to do this. I need to do this because the cost of not adding Bitcoin to my balance sheet is too great. And so I foresee there being a lot more volatility in the amplitude of the price of Bitcoin and MicroStrategy increasing. And personally, I think the volatility of MicroStrategy today, it seems and appears to me like it's already trading as if it's a $1 trillion company. Like, if you were to see the price discrepancy and the change in market cap today, it's more akin to like how a $1 trillion company moves from a relative delta in market cap. So I don't know. I feel pretty confident that the volatility is going to increase, and it's not going to be decreasing in the future.
So I gotta ask. I mean, Josh Mandel described this, you know, this beautiful trade or beautiful situation where you're playing the options market, and you know, it's kind of like playing a pinball machine. And you get a good whack on the pinball and it goes up really high, and it comes down. The next time you kind of get maybe like 80 or 90% of that whack. And the next time it gets down, you maybe get 60 or 70% of that. But once in a while, it comes down, you keep it going enough, and you get a 110, like 150% whack at this thing, and the whole thing goes crazy, and it's pinball wizard time. And it's bing, bada, bing, you know, and the machine's going nuts. And if you were to kind of look at the year ahead and start from sort of now, like how would you think about entering like a MicroStrategy trade or setup? Like how do you, and it's not so much about nominal amount, and it could, you know, maybe we start from scratch, but it applies to people in different situations. Maybe people, you know, are in a very different situation than they thought they were many years ago, when they had a relatively small amount in MicroStrategy. Now they have, with, you know, when the shares divide, you get more shares. So now they have more shares. They could sell covered calls. They could sell puts. They could do all different kind of things. And if you were sort of lining up that pinball wizard machine, what do you think you would do in this year?
Yeah, great question. None of this is financial advice. Yeah, I'm going to start with that.
This is for fun.
This is for fun. But that's a great question. And I think there's three components, right? You've got, well, actually, I think there's four components. Bitcoin in cold storage, boom, saved away. That's your savings account. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Cash, MicroStrategy shares, leverage. So you got four pieces. And those pieces are going to change and move over time. But my goal for 2025 personally is to acquire as many MicroStrategy shares as humanly possible. I feel comfortable with my Bitcoin stack, so I'm a little bit less interested in like you know, making this trade of you know, converting MicroStrategy's shares to cash over to cold storage Bitcoin. I feel comfortable where I'm at. But my entire goal of having as many shares of MicroStrategy as possible, the reason for that is if I want to live off of my shares into perpetuity, I want to be able to have the ability to sell covered calls on my position to generate a yield in the interim strategically, maybe once or twice throughout the year when I think things are crazy to generate a high yield with a lower probability of potentially getting my shares called away. And if they did get called away, it would be so far in the tail, like so high at such a high price, I would be really happy with the outcome, just personally. So with my goal of acquiring as many shares as possible, I'm also strategically applying leverage in both directions. So in a situation where you have implied volatility, like so in November we saw implied volatility increase drastically, like the volatility increased significantly, and then recently in the past 2 months we've seen the implied volatility kind of come back down to like a mean reversion, even potentially lower than the mean. And in this situation where you see a mean reversion, probably in Bitcoin and the price of MicroStrategy, I've added on strategic long leverage with a time horizon that's pretty far out, like 9 months, giving myself like 3 quarters, 9 months to 12 months, giving myself 3 quarters to 4 quarters of a potential situation for this mania to happen again. And in a situation where mania happens again, so let's say we get a crazy run up in May after FASB is announced, or let's just say we get some market mania in May, and implied volatility kind of peaks again. I would be in a situation to potentially offload those leverage positions or exit those leverage positions for a gain, and purchase as many shares as humanly possible, or exercise those contracts to purchase shares to add to my total stack of shares. And then perhaps at that same time, I may be doing that, but also selling a covered call on the existing shares to generate like more yield. And so in that circumstance, you may be gaining cash, so having cash to hold on your balance sheet, and holding that cash for a future point in time where you have the mean reverting back, implied volatility kind of reverting back, and holding for an opportunity to kind of go long again. So I personally, and this is where Josh is like fantastic at his trading. He's doing this on both sides. He's seeing the energy move in both directions, and he's taking the opposite trade, and he'll short it down. He'll go the opposite direction. I'm a little spooked to go the opposite direction on this trade. I am irresponsibly long. I'm very long on this trade, and I personally don't want to pay that much attention to it, where I'm freaking out on the taking a short position and I'm wrong, and it totally flips and goes the other way, and I lose my shares that I've like worked so hard for. So that's kind of I guess my base view on like establishing and creating a position, and because I don't want to sell these shares ever. Like these MicroStrategy shares that I've got, I'm planning on holding forever. And I guess I could be in a situation where, let's say you yield some cash, like when you hit an implied volatility peak, either, porting that over into Bitcoin or using it to facilitate my life, or, whatever that may look like, or whatever that is. And that kind of general structure exists. I mean, people do this all the time. People do this all the time on other equities like Tesla. This is a very common infrastructure that people deployed for Tesla. Anybody that's been a Tesla bull since 2013 and they're holding on to a shitload of shares, they're okay putting some shares at risk on a covered call strategy if they get called away, because they've got so many, because they've been holding since 2013, and they've caught the whole run up from 10 billion up to, I don't know, $1.5 trillion.
So you've heard Bitcoin is the new gold rush by now. As world leaders on all sides have endorsed it as the future of money, and now you're looking to get started, we'll show you how. It's actually easier than you think. First, go to your nearest Byte Federal ATM and turn your cash to coin. Byte Federal has over 1,200 locations around the country with the highest daily limits. Go to our website, bytefederal.com, to find the nearest ATM to you. Log into any wallet, then create an account, deposit your US cash, and instantly convert it to Bitcoin. That's it. We are the only U.S. manufacturer and operator in the Bitcoin ATM industry, and our U.S.-based live customer service is second to none. Go on, give it a whirl, and don't get left behind. Click the link below.